My name is Dr. Catherine Hughes from Crime Psych. I'm a criminal psychologist and I run a business that enables me to bring knowledge and learning to everyone, not just those who are studying at colleges, schools or university. And I do this by producing a range of blogs and free online courses. I also run slightly more in-depth courses, both online and face-to-face. So once you've finished watching this video, head on over to my website and have a look at them. You don't need any previous qualifications or experience to learn with me, and there are lots of different ones available. This particular video is looking at Ted Kaczynski. Between 1978 and 1995, he killed 3 people and injured 23 others in an attempt to start a revolution by conducting this nationwide bombing campaign, and he targeted people involved with modern technology. He was labelled as the unabomber by the FBI because his targets were universities and airlines. With any psychological analysis that I do, I always begin by taking a look at the offender's upbringing and childhood. And when you look at that, there are usually some indicators of trauma that may have contributed to their behaviour. Ted Kaczynski was brought up by a second-generation Polish-American family. His parents have said that he was a happy child, or at least he was, until he suffered severe hives and was put into isolation in hospital as a baby. Ted Kaczynski was placed in isolation for hives at around 6 months old. While he was hospitalised, he was held down by doctors and nurses while they inspected his hives. His mum wasn't permitted to visit her sick baby, and that was a standard hospital policy in 1943. Photographs were taken for the hospital records, and they show that the baby's eyes were just brimming with fear, which would be completely understandable in a strange situation like that. At the time, he was too young really to understand what was happening to him or why. The early years and the early months in an infant's life is a crucial time for forming trust and bonding with parents and siblings. However, he was forced into a situation where he was surrounded by strangers. He was held down. He wasn't allowed to be comforted by his mum. He was hospitalised several times for 8 months following that initial hospitalisation. It's reported by several different sources that his mother felt that this treatment had a significantly negative impact on him. She told a few sources that he was a happy baby prior to this, but he was quiet and very distant following his release from hospital. His mother recalled Ted recoiling from a picture of himself as an infant being held down by physicians examining his hives. She said that he showed sympathy to animals who were in cages or otherwise helpless, which she speculated stemmed from his experience when he was isolated in hospital. His mother kept a record of his behaviour in a baby book, which she later gave to the FBI, and it showed that she recorded that the baby had come home from hospital and is healthy but quite unresponsive after his experience. She recorded in that baby book on March 12, 1943. She turned the book over to the FBI last year. His brother had told the media that after he did return home from hospital, he'd stopped smiling altogether and he'd stopped having much eye contact with people. His mother said that the family termed these periods of unresponsiveness as shutdowns. And as time went on, she said that these shutdowns were increasingly accompanied by fits of rage by him. There are some aspects of his experience that may have impacted on him psychologically. Firstly, we know from attachment theories that when a child or a baby is unable to form an attachment to a caregiver, they tend to have relationship issues over their lifetime. And there is a solid argument that Ted Kaczynski was unable to form an early attachment with his parents, and he didn't trust them. He didn't form that bond with them. I know that we're talking about a baby between the ages of 6 months and a year old. However, it is important to remember that this was no ordinary child. When he started school, he scored 167 on an IQ test. A person of average intelligence would score between 80 and 100 on an intelligence test. And if a person scores less than 75, they're considered as having learning disabilities, and those who have an IQ of over 140 are considered to be geniuses. To give you some frame of reference for this, Einstein's IQ was thought to be around 160, and Ted Kaczynski's was 167. Although there isn't any evidence to suggest that those with higher IQs have earlier childhood memories, but there is evidence to suggest that early childhood memories are more densely recalled later in life. Therefore, this ability to recall the trauma he experienced more vividly means that the resentment he would have felt would also have been a lot stronger. His parents did try to encourage him to take part in activities and to interact with others. However, Ted preferred to be a loner who played music, who read books, and who studied a lot. During first to fourth grade, teachers described him as healthy and well-adjusted. Then the family moved to Illinois, where Ted Kaczynski took the IQ test, meaning that he then skipped sixth grade. Kaczynski later described this as a pivotal event. Previously, he'd been socialised with his peers and he was even a leader, but after skipping ahead, he felt he didn't fit in with the older children and was then bullied by them. In the years that followed, Kaczynski continued to do well at school and he was a member of several different clubs. However, he was always considered an outsider. He came across as fairly shy until you got to know him, so he did have a few friends, but they were quite limited. Now, all of this paints a picture of a young man who had difficulty forming relationships and being able to trust others. Initially, he did quite well socially. However, after he was moved to a higher academic year, with older children, he was less able to form relationships with his peers. He also skipped 11th grade, which meant that he was accepted into Harvard at the age of 16. One of his classmates later recalled that Kaczynski was emotionally unprepared, and he said they packed him up and sent him to Harvard before he was ready. Students' opinions of him at Harvard differed somewhat. Some said that he was shy and withdrawn and would avoid contact with others. Other students say that he was very quiet but personable and friendly. The next pivotal moment in the development of this serial bomber came in his second year of university. He took part in a study led by a Harvard psychologist known as Henry Murray. Some have described this study as being purposely brutalising and very psychologically damaging experiment. The participants were told that they'd be debating personal philosophy with a fellow student, and they were asked to write essays detailing their personal beliefs and their personal aspirations. The essays were then given to an anonymous attorney who, in later sessions, would confront and belittle the subject, making vehement, sweeping, and personally abusive attacks on them, using the content of these essays as ammunition, while electrodes monitored the participants' psychological reactions in their brain. These encounters were filmed, and subjects' expressions of anger and rage would later be played back to them repeatedly. The experiment lasted 3 years, with someone verbally abusing and humiliating Kaczynski and the other participants every week. Kaczynski spent 200 hours as part of the study. For any participant, this would have been a hugely damaging experience for them. These were the participants' own personal beliefs and aspirations that were being ridiculed. The assessor of these essays made personally abusive attacks on each participant. Rather than this being a one-off hurtful experience, the participants were made to relive their anger and rage and made to feel belittled and unworthy over and over again over a prolonged period of time. I would go as far to say that every single participant in that study would still suffer the effects of that trauma. This was an irresponsible project and it should never have been allowed to have been conducted on students. It's also probably safe to say that not all of the participants went on to become killers though. However, this experience, combined with his earlier difficulties in relationship and trust issues, contributed to his breakdown. Kaczynski did go on to do a master's and a doctoral degree in mathematics. He was incredibly driven in his pursuits. He won several awards for his work. From a psychological point of view, this is a man who had a great deal of difficulty relating to others. He doesn't seem to be able to fit in with others and to socialise easily. This is probably due to the trust issues because of his earlier childhood experience, as well as his time in the study at Harvard. It makes sense that he immersed himself in a world that did make sense to him, in the world of numbers. He was able to understand the logical nature of mathematics and so immersed himself within that. He resigned from university in 1969 without giving any explanation. He bought a plot of land with his brother in a remote location and he lived in a self-made cabin with no electricity and no running water. It's reported that his years alone in isolation in the woods didn't bring him peace. His mother said that she thinks it had the opposite effect. Ted grew angrier, more eccentric and more difficult. Kaczynski decided it was impossible to live peacefully in nature because of the destruction of the wildland and the rural area surrounding his cabin by real estate development and some industrial projects. In response to this, he began performing acts of sabotage against nearby developments in about 1975. He was frustrated with society. He felt he didn't belong, and when he did try to live a more remote and self-sufficient life, he felt he had no other option than to act out once that started impacting on him in his remote life. After his arrest, he told officers that he'd been shocked to see the destruction of one of his favourite wild places with a waterfall. And this was destroyed by developers who'd put a road through the area. Kaczynski is recorded as saying, "You just can't imagine how upset I was. It was from that point on I decided that rather than trying to acquire further wilderness skills, I would work on getting back at the system, getting revenge." And so between 1978 and 1995, Kaczynski mailed or hand-delivered a series of incredibly sophisticated bombs that cumulatively killed 3 people and injured 23 others. In all, 16 bombs were attributed to him. I'm certain that he felt incredibly justified in what he was doing. He was extremely intelligent, which meant that he got away with it for so many years by leaving false clues and following no particular pattern with the bombing. His targets were sometimes drawn randomly from a directory. As with all the other serial offenders, his bombing showed a progression in skill, in determination, and in seriousness. He was learning as he went along. He kept a journal, which he noted that he hoped that the second bomb would maim someone. The third bomb was placed in an aeroplane, but was too weak to cause significant damage. After bomb number 4, he wrote that he felt better about being able to strike back. It wasn't until his 11th bomb that he killed a person. During his trial, he tried to sack his lawyers as they wanted him to claim insanity. However, Kaczynski refused to go along with this. He believed that the cause that he believed in shouldn't be tarnished or weakened by him being labelled a madman. This was very, very personal to him. Some professionals have diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia or with psychosis, and others completely disagree and say that he has no psychiatric diagnosis. I personally believe that it's a combination of factors during his life which created a deep set resentment towards technology, society, and developers. However, without a formal assessment, this really is only speculative. I do hope that you've learned something from this psychological analysis and have found it interesting. I would really appreciate it if you'd leave a like or a comment or tell me what you think about this case. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.